I stared at the family photo on Dad's Facebook, the one taken right after my graduation. Sarah stood in the center, her smile perfect, Mom beside her. My heart stopped. I wasn't in it. Not a shadow, not a corner. He had cropped me out completely. That moment, everything I'd ignored for years slammed into me. The missed birthdays, the one-word replies, the empty chairs at my school events. And now this? I wasn't invisible. I was erased. By the man who raised me. But here's what no one knows. That photo was just the start. The truth buried behind it? Far darker than anyone imagined. Growing up, I always thought love was quiet. That being in the background meant being appreciated in silence. So I stayed out of the spotlight, never asking for more than what was given. But now I wonder if I mistook neglect for humility. At every birthday party, Sarah's cake had sparkles and sparklers. Mine barely had my name spelled right. She got a car when she got into college. Nothing extravagant, but brand new. Silver, parked in the driveway with a bow. I got a hug and, "We're proud of you, sweetie." I told myself it was fine. I didn't want a car anyway. I told myself that a lot over the years. There's a photo of our family from when Sarah won her first regional debate. She's in the middle, trophy in hand, Dad's arms around her. I'm off to the side, holding all the bags. No one thought to include me. That was normal. Still, I believed if I just kept doing well, straight A's, part-time job, no trouble, maybe they'd see me one day. Graduation came. I stood on that stage in my gown, scanning the crowd. I spotted Dad's face. He wasn't smiling at me. He was filming Sarah cheering from the front row. Later at dinner, I asked him if we could take a photo. He said, "Of course, family moment." We stood together, me, Sarah, Mom, Dad, right outside the venue. The sun was perfect. I smiled even though my heels were killing me. It felt like maybe, finally, this would be a photo where I was centered, visible. That night, I checked Instagram. Dad had posted it with the caption, "So proud of my girls." The photo was cropped. It was just Sarah and Mom, laughing. I wasn't there. Not even a sleeve. Not even a corner. Underneath, Sarah commented, "Perfect frame." I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something I'd never done before. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just saved the photo to my phone, zoomed in on where I knew I'd stood, and whispered, "Perfect, huh?" That night, I pulled out our old family albums, dusty, faded pages filled with birthdays, holidays, school events, and a pattern I hadn't seen before, or maybe hadn't wanted to. In almost every photo, I was blurred, off to the side, half-cropped, blinking. Sarah was always in focus. I asked Mom the next morning while she folded laundry, "Do you think Dad loves me less?" She didn't answer at first, just kept folding, slower than usual. Then she said, "He loves you. Just differently." Differently, like how? She looked at me like she wanted to say something else, then handed me a clean pair of jeans. "Some things you'll understand when you're older." That day, I found a folded paper slipped into my wallet. Not my handwriting, just one line. "Don't believe everything you see." It was Mom's handwriting. Confused, I went back to the albums. In one old baby photo, labeled Emily, age 2, I noticed something strange. The child in the photo had Sarah's birthmark, the same crescent-shaped mole on her shoulder. I didn't have that. I flipped more pages. There were baby photos labeled as me. But the girl looked nothing like me. Later that night, I sat in the kitchen while Dad sorted mail. My hands were shaking. I asked, "Did you ever love me the way you love Sarah?" He didn't look up. "Of course I love you." "Then why am I never in the picture?" He blinked, paused, then said, "You're not as photogenic." I froze. He stood up and left the room like he hadn't just shattered me with a sentence. The next morning I stood in front of him, with the cropped graduation photo on my phone. "If I were Sarah," I asked, "would you have cropped me out?" He stared at me for a long moment, lips parted like he had an answer but couldn't find it. And in that silence, I finally understood everything. I threw myself into school like it was the only place left that saw me. I studied until my fingers ached from typing, took shifts at the campus library, joined research teams, volunteered at food drives. I didn't just want to succeed. I needed to prove I existed. When I received the letter confirming my full-ride scholarship for grad school, I cried. Not because I doubted I could do it, but because I thought, maybe this would be the moment he saw me. I printed the letter, tucked it into an envelope, with a note that read, "Thank you for everything, Dad. I wouldn't be here without you," and left it on his desk. He opened it during dinner, read it silently, then looked up and said, "Well, I guess you should be thanking Sarah's genes. If it weren't for her pushing the academic bar so high, I'd have never paid attention to your education." I smiled. Not because I felt happy, but because I didn't want him to see me break. That night, I stared at the picture frame on the hallway wall, Sarah in her debate uniform, beaming with her first trophy. My hand touched the glass. Behind my smile, my jaw clenched tight. I returned to my room and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for minutes before I began to type. It started with, "I think my dad hates me." Then I erased that and wrote, "Has anyone ever felt invisible in their own family?" I didn't use my name. I posted it anonymously on a popular confession forum. I described the cropped graduation photo, the years of being ignored, and the pain of giving love that never got returned. I hit post. Within hours, it had gone viral. Hundreds of comments flooded in, people saying they cried, others saying, "You're not alone." Many were angry at the father they didn't even know. "He doesn't deserve her," one wrote. Another, "I hope she cuts him out of her life." Then a comment appeared that made my blood chill. "I went to college with your dad. You should dig into his past. There's more to this story than you think." I stared at the screen. My heart pounded. I clicked the commenter's profile. Empty. No photo. No name. But something about it stuck with me. The next day, I skipped class. I walked to the local library and asked to access old newspaper archives. The clerk gave me a skeptical look but pointed me to the microfilm machine. Hours passed. My eyes scanned names, headlines, events from 25 years ago. And then I saw it. A birth announcement. Same name as my father. A daughter born to him, and a woman named Elaine. The baby's name? Emily. Same as mine. My hands trembled as I flipped forward. 2 years later, an obituary. Emily Rose, beloved daughter of my father's name, and Elaine, passed away in a tragic accident. I felt the world tilt. My knees nearly gave out. I wasn't named after a family member. I was named as one. The second Emily. A replacement. I ran home, breath tight, hands numb. I slammed open my mother's bedroom door. She looked up from her book, startled. "Why did you name me Emily?" Her face drained of color. I held up my phone, showing her the old newsprint photo of the other Emily. She looked down, then away. "You knew," I whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "You let him do this," I said. "You let him treat me like some stand-in." Her voice cracked. I thought maybe if I loved you enough it would change. That you'd become more than a memory to him." I didn't scream. I just left. I wandered the city until midnight, then sat on a bench outside a closed bookstore. The wind was cold, but it was the quiet I needed. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. If I'm just a copy of someone else, can I ever be loved for me? That night, I didn't go home. By morning, I had made a decision. I would find the woman named Elaine. If my entire identity had been a lie, I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. But by the time I tracked down her last known address online, the house had been sold. No forwarding info, no records, just silence. The DNA kit sat on my desk for 3 days before I opened it. I didn't know what I feared more, being someone else's child, or still being theirs, and knowing it had never been enough. I spat into the tube, sealed the package, and sent it off without telling anyone. Then I waited. Every email notification made my stomach turn. 2 weeks later, the results came. There it was. 99.99% match. I was biologically their daughter. No mistake, no switch, no hidden family secret, at least, not in that sense. I didn't know how to feel. I was hoping for something to explain everything. A clean cut, a reason for the years of distance, the disregard. But all it confirmed was the truth I had feared the most. I was their daughter by blood. And still, somehow, not enough. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went to Mom. "Did Dad name me?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I did. Why Emily?" She looked down at her hands. Because I wanted to end it. I wanted to reclaim the name. I stared at her, confused. She continued. "He wanted to name you something else. I said no. I wanted to name you Emily. Not because of the one before you, but to give that name a new life, a full one." My heart thudded. So I wasn't a replacement, not by design. But I had been a ghost to someone else's past anyway. That night I logged into Facebook, hovered over the Edit Profile button, and changed my name to E. Grace. Not to hide, not out of spite, but to start something that belonged to me. I deleted every photo that didn't feel like me. All the smiling group shots where I stood at the edge, all the family pictures where I was little more than a placeholder. Gone. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. For the first time in my life, I started to imagine what it might be like to live for myself. No more chasing acknowledgement. No more bending into shapes I wasn't built for. I launched a podcast 2 weeks later. It was called The Quiet Ones. Just my voice. No video. In the first episode, I talked about being invisible in a family that only had room for one golden child. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I spoke to every kid who'd ever been cropped out of their own story. The feedback trickled in slowly at first. A few listeners, then a dozen, then hundreds. By the 6th episode, when I told the story of the graduation photo, it blew up. It was shared across forums, Twitter, TikTok. Comments poured in. "This is my life. You just described my childhood. Thank you for saying what I never could." I was stunned, not just by the numbers, but by the connection. For the first time, my words weren't floating into a void. In episode 9, I broke. "I don't want sympathy," I said. My voice cracked on air. "I don't want anyone to pity me or tell me how strong I am. I don't even need an apology. I just want to be seen. I want to matter without having to earn it." There was a long pause, then a sob. I left it in the edit. People wrote in, saying it was the most honest thing they'd heard in years. That same night, I got an email from a sender with no subject line. Just a short message. "You make me feel like the smallest man in the world. Not because you said anything cruel, but because I didn't know how to love you the way you needed. It was signed, Dad. I stared at it for 10 minutes, unreadable emotions pulsing under my skin. He hadn't said sorry. He hadn't asked for forgiveness. Just that. A confession of inadequacy. I didn't know if I should reply, so I closed the laptop and let the words sit. For once, I wasn't the one chasing. I didn't go back for closure. I went back to bury the part of me that waited. The version of myself that sat quietly, hoping for a glance, a nod, a single frame. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The house looked the same shutters, same chipped porch swing. My mother opened the door with tired eyes. No surprise in her face. Just quiet acceptance. I told her, I won't stay long. She nodded. Dad was in the living room, flipping through a magazine he wasn't really reading. I stood in the doorway until he looked up, his mouth parted, unsure if he should smile or frown. I got your email, I said. He nodded. I didn't expect you to respond. I didn't. Silence. I came because there's something I want to say, I continued. And I don't need you to say anything back. He put the magazine down slowly. All right. I took a deep breath. You didn't just crop me out of a photo. You cropped me out of moments, memories, a childhood. You cropped me out of your love, out of your eyes, out of the place a daughter should belong. His hands clasped. I never meant to. You didn't mean to. I cut in, voice calm, deliberate. But you did. And your intentions don't erase the space you never made for me. His lips trembled slightly. I only wanted to keep the good parts, the ones that made sense, that made me proud. And I didn't, I asked. I wasn't good enough to keep. He hesitated. Then, you were different. There it was. The word. Different, I echoed. Because I wasn't Sarah. Because I didn't fill the hole she did. Because I didn't smile the right way or say the right things or look like the daughter you lost before me. His head dropped. I don't know how to explain it. I stared at him, my chest hollow but steady. You don't have to. I'm done trying to decode you. He looked up and for a moment I saw a flicker of regret. Maybe real. Maybe not. I didn't care. I reached into my bag and pulled out a simple wooden frame. Inside was the only photo I kept from graduation. One of just me, alone, in cap and gown, smiling toward the horizon. I placed it on the coffee table. This is the only frame I needed, I said. Me. Complete. No one cropped out. He looked at the photo. No words. Then I handed him an envelope. It's a letter. You don't need to read it now, or ever. But it's not for you. It's for me. He took it, almost reverently. I turned to leave. At the door, I paused. I hope one day you understand what you lost. Then I walked out. The sun was setting. I felt light, not free. Yet, but lighter. Like I'd set something down I'd carried far too long. I didn't answer Mom when she asked if I'd stay for dinner. I just said goodbye and meant it. That night I got a call from her. Your father cried. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. A few days later I met Sarah for coffee. She looked nervous, eyes flickering everywhere but at me. I owe you, she started. You don't, I replied. No, she insisted. I do, I knew. Not all of it, but enough. I saw the way he looked at me, and how he didn't at you. Then why didn't you say anything? She looked down. Because I liked being the favorite, and I was scared that if I gave that up, I'd have nothing. I sipped my drink, letting the silence stretch. Then I said, You don't have to be sorry, to be honest. She looked up, eyes misting. I'm both. I nodded. I forgive you. She blinked. Just like that? Not for you, I said. For me. Later that week, a package arrived at my door. No note, just a large photo print, framed. It was the family photo from graduation, the original shot. But this time, I was in the center, and for once, everyone was looking at me. Not perfectly posed, not edited, not curated, real. I hung it above my desk. It wasn't about approval. It wasn't validation. It was a reminder of who I was and what I refused to be cropped out of again. The first sentence took weeks. I rewrote it a dozen times, erased it, started again. Until one night, just past midnight, I typed, "They didn't erase me because they hated me. They just didn't know how to see me." That became the opening line of Cropped Girl, the frame I deserved. The title came to me while staring at the graduation photo above my desk. It wasn't bitterness that inspired it. It was clarity, a knowing that I no longer needed anyone to frame me into their narrative. I had my own lens now. I wrote late into the nights. Mornings were for therapy. I sat across from a woman with warm eyes and a notebook always half full. At first, I told her the big moments, the crop, the silence, the favoritism. Then I began to reveal the smaller cuts, the birthday wish that never came, the time Dad forgot to pick me up, the science fair medal that went unnoticed. She didn't interrupt. She listened. And when I asked, "Was it me? Was I just hard to love?" she said no. "You were just never the one they learned how to love properly." The book poured out faster after that. I added a chapter about Sarah, about how forgiveness isn't a gift to others, but a release for ourselves. I described the moment in the cafe when she looked me in the eye and said she was sorry, not for the past, but for her silence. That chapter became the most quoted. One line in particular spread fast. Sometimes people don't abandon you out of cruelty. They just never learned how to love someone like you. It was shared on quote pages, printed on posters, tattooed on someone's ribcage in cursive. Someone even sent me a photo of it. Emails followed. Hundreds. Then thousands. I thought I was the only one. You wrote the words I couldn't say. I'm sending this to my therapist. Among them, one message hit hardest. It was short, from a girl I barely remembered, a classmate from high school. She wrote, "I saw you once, alone after the winter formal. Everyone had gone. You were still waiting for your ride. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't say anything. I'm sorry. I wish I had." I sat there for minutes, phone in hand, overwhelmed, not by sadness, but by the quiet beauty of being seen, even belatedly. I replied, "You see me now. That's enough." I began speaking at schools. Not about abuse, not about trauma in the traditional sense, but about the slow, invisible hurt of being left out by people who say they love you. I called it the silent wound, and the room always fell quiet when I described the graduation photo. One girl came up after a talk, tears streaming down her face. She said, "My dad posts pictures with my brother all the time. I thought I was crazy for noticing. But now, I know I'm not." I hugged her and said, "You were never crazy, just aware." When publishers asked if I wanted to do a book tour, I agreed, but on my terms. I asked that we include community workshops, writing circles, open mics for people like me, who had spent too long unheard. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It became a thread connecting thousands. Then came the film offer. A small indie studio pitched adapting both the podcast and the book into a short film. They promised it would stay honest, raw, quiet, emotionally faithful. I signed. Weeks later, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, from Dad. He didn't ask to meet. He didn't plead. Just said he had read my book, watched the podcast clips, even saw the teaser for the film. The last line read, "You don't have to let me back in. I just wanted you to know. I see you now." I didn't write back. Instead, I found the original cropped graduation photo, the one where I was cut out completely. I printed it. Then I took a Sharpie and wrote across the bottom, "You don't need to crop me anymore, but I've already chosen a new frame." I mailed it, not out of spite, but to close the loop. When the film released online, it reached over 2 million views in the first week. The comments section turned into a support group of strangers turned siblings in pain. One comment stood out. "I'm not the forgotten one anymore. I'm the author of my own story." The final scene of the film mirrored the end of my journey. A girl standing at her graduation, alone, holding her diploma. A photographer asks, "Anyone else in the photo?" She shakes her head. "No," she says. "Just me. That's enough." The screen fades to black with one final quote. I'm no longer standing at the edge of someone else's picture. I'm holding the camera now, and I'm finally in focus. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, buried beneath a stack of mail. No return address. Just my name in familiar handwriting. My heart hesitated before my fingers did. I opened it slowly, expecting a letter, another apology, or maybe silence wrapped in ink. But inside was a photograph, a printed, slightly faded image. Me, about 6 years old, standing in the backyard with a popsicle in one hand, the other raised mid-wave. My smile was crooked, my hair uneven. In the background, a wooden fence leaned slightly to the left, and a dog I barely remembered ran by in a blur. The photo was untouched. No edits, no cropping. It was the only picture I'd ever seen that my father had taken of me. Just me. Without trying to perfect or erase it. No note accompanied it. Just the picture. I sat down at my desk, staring at the little girl who had always been there, just out of focus. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I placed the photo in a small silver frame, nothing fancy, and set it next to the one from graduation. The two Emilys, 6 and 22, side by side. Not to forgive the past, not to romanticize pain, but to remember. Some people love in broken ways. Some never learn how to love at all. But even flawed gestures can carry meaning. That was our peace. Not a full reconciliation, but a shared acknowledgement that something had been lost. And maybe, in small ways, found again. A year later, the Frame Project launched. It started as a blog, a community space for people raised in the shadows of golden siblings, of unspoken expectations, of conditional love. A place where stories could breathe, where names didn't matter, only voices. We hosted writing workshops, group calls, guided exercises in self-definition. Our tagline was simple. You don't need to be in their picture to be real in your own life. It grew faster than I expected. Within 6 months, we had chapters in 5 cities. College campuses started inviting us to speak. One school even replaced its Family Day with a new tradition, Chosen Frame Day, where students could honor the people who made them feel truly seen. I gave a TED Talk in Chicago. The title, The Frame You Deserve. I walked on stage, not with statistics or credentials, but with a story. I told them about the crop, about the silence, about how I used to think I was the problem because I took up too little space. And then I said this: not everyone who crops you out of their life is a villain. Some are just trapped in frames too small to hold you, and that's okay. You don't need to shrink to fit someone else's view. You can choose your own frame. You can build one big enough to hold everything you are." The audience was silent, then rising. After the talk, people lined up to hug me. Not because I was a speaker, but because I was a mirror for their pain, their survival, their strength. A mother wrote to me a week later. She said she heard her teenage daughter crying in her room after watching the talk. When the mother knocked, the girl said, "Mom, I think I've been cropping myself out of my own life." That's when I knew it was more than a story. It was a legacy, not of revenge, but of reclamation. I never saw Dad again. We didn't have a movie-ending reunion, no tearful embrace, no sudden transformation, but we had the photo. And sometimes, that's enough. Mom called once to say he had started keeping a photo of me on his desk, the one from the film set. She said he tells people, "That's my daughter. She's a writer." I never asked for more. I still visit Sarah sometimes. We talk like people who know each other's damage and choose gentleness. She's building her own family now. She asked if I'd be godmother to her daughter. I said yes, not because the past is erased, but because the future deserves better than what we were handed. I still run the podcast, now with guest voices. People who've survived the quiet erasures, the invisible exclusions. The ones who were never told they mattered and somehow made it anyway. Our last season was titled In the Center Now, because that's where we are. No longer at the edge, no longer edited out. I still write, still speak, still remember. And every time I see that photo of me at 6 years old, I whisper, "I see you now. I'll never crop you again."